Barrister Fru, Barrister Mbeseha, welcome back once again. We have a few minutes, but there are three important things we have to talk about. The education in Ambazonia has been crippled by the war, there's no doubt. I'm happy that this is not the statistics given by UNICEF there. It's not coming from us. It's coming from UNICEF, an accredited organization. But the shocking part about it is the much they can do is their statistics. Cameroon is pretending or claiming that everything is normal. The media in Cameroon is the worst I've ever seen in planet Earth. They are so dull and so terrible that they will barely even tell their own people that their army is dying daily in Gokitunja, in Bui, in Manfe. So Cameroon has successfully turned even those who thought were doing media in the diaspora like Mimi Mefo, like for Hansen. They are all now proxies of the colonial administration. The truth is not being told. If we don't tell this truth, if UNICEF will not manage to give a gross underestimation of the collateral damages that have happened in schools, will not be. But the world is still with tight lips, and we're here this evening to see how, like the president is saying there, to push our narrative through and to get some people really talking and talking and talking really hard. I'll begin with you, Barrister Mbeseha. You've heard that. I want us to take it chronologically. There are three things we have to take before we transition into the zone for the draft to begin. First of all, we will take this issue on schools. We're going to take on Cameroon's electioneering and the betrayal from those who are supposed to be clergies of Ambazonian descent. You realize that the chief manipulators in the Christendom in the Cameroons are both Anglophones in quotes or Southern Cameroonians. You have Funky on the other side from the Presbyterian Church, and you have Bishop Nkia from the church. These two are the most manipulative clergies in Cameroon when it comes to the plight of their own people. So, but we'll take it slowly. I want us to talk just on this aspect of education in relation to what Tabitha reported. Please, Vice Mbeseha.
Again, thank you, Paddy, for having me. But I would like to be a little bit different. You see, I should have thought that the discussion for today should be very, very focused on drafting, diplomacy, and legal. Because that's what we're here for. I should have thought that our people, before they go to draft or at the draft, they should understand what diplomacy and legal mean when they draft their money. That's more important. We've talked about schools before. If there's no new element today, it should have been just those bishop's things. So if you permit me, I go back and act and talk about this, then I go to the bishop thing straight. See, we should understand why the president titles this diplomacy and legal, because the two go hand in hand. We've explained earlier why we need to do them. But again, let me caution, just pure caution. Who analyze foreign diplomacy and want to compare it to ours, we must be very, very careful with what we say and how we conclude. Those are not our own issues. We must be very, very careful. We must understand the diplomatic language in which they are. The president of Russia and America, Trump and Putin, they were yesterday in Alaska. No, they were not talking about money. They were not talking about the economy. They were talking about war. That was the essence. They were talking about the war between Ukraine and Russia. And what they came out and said there, maybe we missed it. They said there's no deal until there's a deal. That is a lot in diplomatic language. I said earlier, the United States is not involved in any war. But when they call that meeting, they are talking for Russia, for Ukraine. They don't hide that. They're acting for Ukraine after having entered deals with the Ukrainians. That's their private deal. But they say there's no deal until there's a deal. They report to the Ukrainian people, to the government, and until they approve of whatever thing they talk about with Russia, there's no deal. Can that have any meaning to us comparatively? Of course. We've seen Yaoundé. and their supporters frame out peace, frame out negotiations where people go to Canada, where they go to Yaoundé, call it Grand National Dialogue or anything. And they purport to make peace. They purport to find solutions. Without solutions, there will be no solutions for Cameroon government, for Cameroon problem, until there's a deal. And that deal can only be entered into legally by the interim government of the government of Ambazonia. People in France, people in London don't understand what the government is. That's legal. Our diplomatic package should help our people explain to France, explain to the UK, explain to whoever abroad the essence and the importance of this government. What do we represent? Because yeah, when they will say we are negotiating with different French people, they should tell you you are negotiating with the wrong man. Talk to these people because these are people who represent what they want back in 1961. That is legal. And so we have to marry this together. For people to know exactly what they are drafting, why the president calls this thing diplomacy and legal. And of course, we've already explained diplomacy is not what you're going to see out there, it is then what you're going to be told later on. And you see it happen. And again, compared to what happened in Russia and and Trump, they are they've changed the narrative. We have just said it here. The Russians have imposed it on us to Ukraine that there's no need for a ceasefire without addressing the root causes of the problem, because that's postponing the problem. You will know the problem, maybe you will know. Of my is personal. The problem there is the extension of NATO into Ukraine. And Russia says, no, that's the last thing that we want to accept. And of course, they have stood their point, address the root causes, and the problem will be solved. And you end this mock segment by saying that see the reaction of the world. Even NATO, as far as this morning I saw it, they're clapping their hands. That's the best thing. Let us deal with, this, with the main problem. Can we transition that to our own problem, which is what is important for us while we draft? Yes,
That-
we must draft
That's
because
amazing. That's amazing. That's an amazing
yeah, because
contribution there by Mbeseha. We have just
let
a
me say
few
land.
minutes. Not
No,
coming,
just give me
please.
1 minute because I don't have a lot of time. Permit me just to land. I've addressed that.
1 minute is too
Then I
much.
said
Few seconds.
the only new element that we can address locally, to me, is that Bishop's thing going to the treaty because that word is new.
We are going to come. We are
Because
coming to that, By Mbeseha. We'll come to
okay,
that
because I
so
thought
that
you
we
said
can
we have
hold
no
in.
time. Okay,
We'll come
if
to
that's
that,
okay,
please. We'll
all
come
right.
to that. There are some things you said there that I'm in full agreement with you. What is happening on the ground, how we can compare them with our fight or our struggle and see the possible outcome, which was what we started. But I strategically chose every topic this evening because it is very related. I thought that as legal minds, we would have reiterated the government stance for the past years on education. The government, because we have Cameroon strategically sabotaging that the people of Ambazonia are stopping their own people from going to school. You heard Dr. Mungwa there saying, Barrister Fru, that we need to do proper communication so we can also influence the narrative, not just change the narrative. When everybody has said what they have to say about us restricting children from going to school, what do we have to say? That's part of diplomacy. So I beg to disagree with you, by Mbeseha, that this topic was not essential for the effort to communicate our diplomatic stance. Barrister Fro, I'd like you to really talk on this because the government has a stand that must be articulated to the international community. And that influences our diplomacy categorically. So when you see UNICEF is coming today to place the danger, it only explains the rationale of the government policy in this regard. Go ahead, Vice Chancellor.
Yes, Paddy, I have seen those statistics from UNICEF, and it buttress the stand of the government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. The government stand, let me repeat again, is that the government has not and will never stop its own citizens, children, from going to school. All the government said was it is left in the hands of the parents to evaluate the security situation on the ground and see whether it's safe for a child to go to school. This government will not allow a child to be picked up by a bullet, a flying bullet, coming from crossfire or from one fire to the other. That is why the government maintained that position from the inception of this conflict. The government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia wants its children to go to school. But the government has also taken steps to draft the curriculum that will be used when we receive our sovereignty. Now, in the meantime, the government has told parents to take responsibility over their children because we are operating from a war zone. And in a war zone, where there is a crossfire, you cannot send a child to go to school and be caught by a bullet. We have the case of Andale in Boya, Little Tato in Bamenda, and so on and so forth, which have been caught by bullets coming from this conflict. And this government has maintained that position. And the statistics that UNICEF has issued today buttresses the position of this government. It indicates that the war in Ambazonia is very active, and for that reason, parents have taken their responsibility for not having their children killed. So schools have been affected, and there are many areas that schools have been affected because of the fighting. Therefore, La République du Cameroon bears total responsibility for what is happening to our children. And UNICEF should know that. If they don't know that, it is maybe because they are not interested in what is happening on the ground. The war is raging, and La République tends to tell the world that everything now is normal. They are not telling the world that soldiers have been killed in Bui. Cameroon soldiers have been killed in Bui. They have been killed in Gokutunja. They have been killed in Manyu. They have been killed in Mezam and other hotspots, even Dian and Meme. But La République will tell the world everything is normal. Until we come to the negotiating table and have a deal. And that deal, I argue, will have to be our sovereignty for us to enter our resources and take care of our children, our children's children, and our great-grandchildren still to come. But if without that, what would be the reason? Who is talking for us? Ukraine is lucky because the United States is talking for Ukraine. Who is talking for Ambazonia? It's like we are doing it on our own. That is why the draft today is so important, that will give the resources to our people to make our case in the international community understood by everybody. That is, it is logical.
That's an amazing point made right there. Very quickly, so we use the few minutes left in our hands effectively. Let's talk about the Ndenkia and the clergies in Ambazonia or in Yaoundé visiting offices. Reverend Kia there was well aware of the criticism that will be coming his way, and he started claiming that his visit to some offices is apolitical. How apolitical that is a question that I would like to ask us. But Mbeseha, I know you have been willing to talk on this. Please, let's try to focus on that so that we can
Yes,
get into it
I'll
very
focus on it, but
quickly.
let me just go back. Let me just go back to education. You have mentioned. Let me say something on education
Okay, sir.
because we're dealing with diplomacy. Going to university, for
Yes.
example, international organization. Our people will
Now,
go to talk about schools. We go to UNICEF to talk about schools or to any other person, any other international organization. This is the information you should use, which they will not challenge you. Education wise, schools have failed in Ambazonia. What is the evidence? Information from the Ministry of Education itself. The statistics show that most of the schools in Ambazonia are closed down. This is official. Information from the Ministries of Education indicate, for example, that the GC, which is a yearly exam, the centers, more than 80% of the centers in Ambazonia are closed. The results are there to show you. They show they are closed. And last and most important, Yaoundé themselves have admitted that schools have failed in Ambazonia. A good example and a good piece of evidence. Take to them. In Cameroon, generally speaking, schools are due to resume on the 7th, Monday, 7th of September. That's the official date for resumption of schools. But as far as Ambazonia is concerned, even in terms of Yaoundé, officially, schools are not resuming in Cameroon, in Ambazonia on the 7th of September. They are resuming on the 8th. Why? Because 7th of September is a ghost town day declared by Ambazonians in honor of this fight. Education, whatever Yaoundé believes, man, they don't authorize schools to resume on Monday. That's the three piece of evidence that our diplomatic people should use to support the idea of a failed education system. That is that. Now let me then go to your bishops.
Mbeseha, before you continue, the punchlines you gave there, I'll personally have an excerpt of them because it was so perfectly articulated. You